The NFL is in a golden age to draft wide receivers and draft them high, and that's the perfect time for the Steelers to strike. It's the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. A reminder, the Locked On Steelers podcast is the part of the #1 sports podcasting network here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We got a lot to go over today. We got our mock draft Monday winner to go over, but of course, we got more call-in questions to get to. Should the Steelers use all 12 picks and maybe use some other strategies with how to make up space to find those guys with places on the roster? We'll also talk about leadership questions, but the big thing I want to talk to you about in this episode is a research project that I've been working on for a little bit of time for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It's an article that'll come out later this week, but I'm giving you a peek into what my research has been, and it's been specifically on the progression of how wide receivers have been drafted into the NFL over the last 25 years, and why I think, and the numbers show, this is now a golden age to capitalize on drafting wide receivers high and making sure that you find your playmaker for the future. Now, the reason I'm going at this is because I do think the Steelers are going to prioritize wide receiver high in this draft. If one's not taken in the first round, I believe second round is almost a given that that's the position that they're going to attack. Despite them trading for Michael Pittman, I think between him and DK Metcalf, they have a good 1-2 punch. But this team truly needs a separator wide receiver, a playmaker. We've gone over that a lot. We've talked about my favorites, but I want to talk about what opportunity presents itself in front of the Steelers right now. Historically, can you think back to the last time the Steelers spent a first-round pick on a wide receiver? It's actually been 20 years since that happened. The last one was Santonio Holmes in 2006, produced the Super Bowl 43 MVP, big-time playmaker, big-time separator, eventually had to be traded away because of off-field issues, and that led to other questions, but he was hugely productive for the Steelers in the time that he was with them, and a big weapon for Ben Roethlisberger during that era. Certainly one of the greatest Steelers memories for any Steelers fan who's been alive over the last 30 years. So that right there is is the last time that it's happened there. But the thing that I'm bringing this up is because I went through and I combed through the numbers and how the Steelers, as you know, if you're a Steelers fan, they have found a way to hit at wide receiver without drafting in the first round. So some people have said, well, they don't need to do this. But in my opinion, it is now time to buck that trend and say, hey, it's time to spend and go all in on getting a wide receiver, and not all in and saying trade all your picks, but go be aggressive and get a guy towards the top of a class, because right now is an era, and it has been for the last 6 years, where wide receivers have been producing very well, and it's looking like this is a time when I think the NFL as a league is figuring out the right type of receivers to draft early. Now, to do this, I went back to the last 25 years from 2001 to 2025 and looked up every receiver who was drafted. I looked up the numbers, and what I wanted to determine was how many receivers were getting drafted in the top 100, how many receivers were turning into productive players for their team. So to determine that, I went back and I looked up. I determined if you were a quote unquote hit was if you at least had 1,000 yard receiving season, 1,000 yards of receiving yards in a season since for the team that you got drafted by. And so when I looked at that, I said, okay, this would constitute a hit. And I said, let me go through each of these years, and I found, breaking it down by draft class, where the best hits come from. And I broke it down into 3 eras that we were able to split up that kind of saw different paths as far as how receivers were being drafted and how productive they were being. And the last 6 years, you've seen more receivers drafted higher than any time in the last 25 years, but you've also seen a higher hit rate than before. Now, going over this, if you look at at where guys have been drafted, the top 100, it is now basically a given that every year almost 13 or 14 players are receivers are going to be drafted inside the top 100. Over the last 6 years, it's been an average of almost 15 total per year. And in doing that, you've seen a rise and increase of teams trying to find their playmaker wide receiver higher in draft classes, not waiting into the later rounds and trying to figure out on day 3, but trying to figure out by the end of day 2, can we get our playmaker in there? And despite that higher volume of players who they've been going after, the hit rate it has actually increased over time as far as finding them. Between the 3 different eras that I broke down, 2001 to 2010, 2011 to 2018, in the last 6 years, 2019 to 2025, out of the 227 receivers who've been drafted over the last 6 years, 34 of them have had at least one 1,000-yard season, or a hit year. And out of that, that's a rate of 15%. That's higher than the other 2 years. Now, why that's significant is that it's high. That's a higher rate than the other 2 years, and you haven't really seen most of these receivers' careers play out yet, or at least several of these receivers' careers. For example, in the 2011 to 2018 era, you've now seen the youngest receivers that were drafted in 2018 of that era. They're in their 7th years of their career. We're talking, that's when James Washington was drafted, right? So that's how far back you got to go. Those receivers of those classes have played out their entire careers and had their chances to develop. They've had their 1,000-yard seasons. So we've been able to see that play out over time. There is a higher rate, a higher percentage of players who have achieved that status of having a 1,000-yard season. And we really haven't seen the receivers over the last 2 years get their chance to truly grow. In fact, the only rookie receiver this past year that reached that mark was Ted McMillan of the Panthers. But I'd place a really strong bet on other receivers from this class emerging to achieve that status, like Emeka Egbuka, maybe Luther Burden, and then also guys from the previous class who have yet to do it, like Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, maybe not all of them, but more of them. And so you're going to see that hit rate increase over time. But the point being, teams are drafting wide receiver higher, they're drafting them faster, and they're getting better at doing it. And now is the time for the Steelers to get in on that. That's why I've been emphasizing so many mock drafts where the Steelers trade up to get Makai Lemon or Jordyn Tyson, or they get KC Concepcion, or they get Omar Cooper Jr., because you can find guys late. But the bottom line is, if you wait until outside the top 100, you're really playing a lot of guessing games. Even in this golden age of drafting wide receivers, you're still hitting at about 3.3% of the time, if you're waiting outside the top 100. And naturally, right, you're going to be less likely to find a star player the later you draft. But that's why it's imperative for right now, if the Steelers want to get the wide receiver position correct and fix that for the foreseeable future, it's important to go and get your first round wide receiver in a time when more and more receivers that are being drafted in the first round are turning into those productive players. Another example of this, even if you take out all the errors, just combined over the last 25 years, you have a chance out of the 104 wide receivers who've been drafted in the first round over the last 25 years, 48 of them have had at least a 1,000-yard season or been a hit. That's a hit rate of 46.2%. You're basically flipping a coin. So if you're a team, that makes a good estimated guess on, does your proper scouting on players, and you go aggressive and you go get your wide receiver, you have a good chance of that guy being a really productive receiver for you. Now, I didn't get into all pro, I didn't get to superstar levels, but this is why I think the Steelers need to go big and draft one in the first round, because if the Steelers can get that right this year, it gives them a higher hit rate of getting it right in the draft. But then also, again, and we'll get to more of this in the second segment, I think there's a really good chance with what they're trying to cultivate on offense, and with an offensive minded head coach and Mike McCarthy, that said receiver will be put in a system that benefits them. They'll be put in a locker room with 2 veteran wide receivers in their receiver room already that'll help them push forward. And to me, that's a great way to not just make sure you get the talent at wide receiver, but you put that receiver in a position to grow, in a position to learn, in a position to eventually become an integral part of your offense for years to come. But I'll have more of this in the Post Gazette, in the coming days. I think we're not sure about when my study and my showings are gonna publish here. But the bottom line is, when I look throughout the eras of the last 6 years, you're seeing wide receivers drafted higher, you're seeing wide receivers drafted better, and you're seeing less and less misses as far as the top guys go. And that, to me, that is a big sign that the Steelers, it's time for them to get in on that process. And listen, the Steelers had taken their stabs in the years before at wide receiver. That they took some shots to find guys, like Chase Claypool. It didn't work out. Deontay Johnson didn't work out in the long term. But the Steelers, when they used to take these shots, they did find them. Like the times that they drafted guys in the 3rd round, in the 2nd round, Antonio Brown in the 6th round. Again, that's a rarity. You're not going to be able to do that. But their investments to get guys like Emmanuel Sanders, like Mike Wallace, like Juju Smith-Schuster, they paid off to give the Steelers productive playmakers for their offense. And that's what this team needs right now. Even if the guy that they draft this year doesn't turn into the best wide receiver in football the way Antonio Brown was for 6 years, as long as he comes in and he's a really productive player and he puts himself in that conversation for a young upstart wide receiver with the other talent that's going to be around him, I think that's going to be something that's a huge boost to the Steelers offense and it hasn't had for some years now. And if you're cultivating it the right way, it could lead to a lot more success down the line than just in their rookie season or in their early years. So be on the lookout for that study where I produce more of like the data and the information that I've been combing through. But the bottom line, the Steelers need to capitalize on this golden age of drafting wide receiver. It's the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're going to continue this episode in a second here, and we will get to some of your questions on the Locked On Steelers call-in line, as well as Mock Draft Monday, where a bunch of you guys submitted your mock drafts. We'll get to those all next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today only on TurboTax. We're also brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire, and this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here today. I've been talking a lot about the wide receivers and why this is a golden age for drafting them. But before we continue, I want to remind you, you can join the Everydayers Club for the Locked On Steelers podcast. Don't forget to check out the Everydayers Club for ad-free episodes of our show here, and you can get access to a group chat with other listeners of the show. Tap the link in the show notes or visit LockedOnSteelers.com or LockedOnSteelers.supercast.com to join today. Let's continue our episode here and keep it moving forward. As always, you can call in with questions to the Locked On Steelers podcast by calling 412-223-6648. 6644. Leave your name, where you're from, keep your question under a minute, and we try to get your questions on the show. This next one kind of builds itself off of what I was talking about towards the end of that last segment there. Steelers Steve from Bakersfield, California. Take it away.
Hey, CC, this is Steeler Steve from Bakersfield, California. Love your show. Love watching it. Watch it every day. Quick question. Would it behoove us to move up in the draft to get Makai Lemon, wide receiver, and have him learn, under Metcalf and Pitton Jr.? Let me know what you think. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for calling in, Steeler Steve. Sorry for the image. We mixed up the names on who that was there if you're watching on YouTube. But as always, 412-223-6644 to leave your name, your question, and get your question on the show. But Steeler Steve, I've been all about this. You asked that question, and I was like, this guy, you got to watch this because I've been about trading up for Makai Lemon since we started the draft process back in January. But especially because of what I talked about in the last segment, towards the end of the last segment, whoever the Steelers draft at wide receiver, and especially early, is going to come into a wide receiver room not with not coming in thinking I'm the best man here, I'm the most dominant player, there's no other talent in the room. He's going to come into a receiver room with talented guys who have been really good NFL veterans in DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman, big tall guys that are playmakers, that are going to be playmakers on this team, and are going to make it so that receiver is going to have to fight for his own space in the offense. And to me, that's a perfect opportunity to groom a player into a leader. One thing I think that was really important for the Steelers of the 2000s, and I talked about this a little bit on our Steelers Squad show. Check that out, 8 p.m. Wednesday nights right here, 8 p.m. Eastern Wednesday nights live right here on YouTube, where we do our show with Tyler Feldman, Ben Bobek, Wayne Gandy, and sometimes other guests as well. But I talked about this briefly there. Hines Ward was so important to the Steelers of the 2000s, not just because he was a playmaker, but because he was a leader, and he set the tone to make it so that they make it easier for other guys to step in and fill their roles and play with the team and play under him and kind of, be playmakers and have a leader that kind of set the tone for everyone else and the standard for everyone else. And that led to other guys coming in like Santonio Holmes that played really well, like Antoine Randall, who played really, really well. And it set a tone for other guys, even when they didn't play well, like Limas Swede. There was the Ravens AFC Championship game where Limas Swede dropped a pass. It could have been a touchdown, and he sulked for a bit. And Hines Ward, he said, "Hey, come get up and make the next play." And sure enough, shortly after that, Limas Swede laid out a guy in Corey Ivy for Heath Miller, and it helped him get some extra yards in the play. That's the kind of guy that Hines Ward was. He set the tone for the wide receiver room for basically a decade. And then eventually, the Young Money crew came in with Mike Wallace, Emmanuel Sanders, and Antonio Brown. And, that led to the future of Antonio Brown being the best receiver in football. But this is what the Steelers have been missing, in my opinion, is leadership in the wide receiver room and having Pittman and Metcalf. Even though Metcalf, he popped off in that Lions game, he was a leader pretty much all season long. This was a guy who, in the first Ravens game, when Ben Skoronek's hand was broken and DK Metcalf noticed, he said, "Get out of here, I'll do the gunner job," and he did the gunner job pretty well on that play, because he said, I'm here to help my teammate, and he was trying to protect his teammate so he didn't further injure himself. This is a guy who shows up early to practice, stays late after practice to keep working on things, and that's the kind of stuff that I think DK Metcalf has brought to the table. And from everything that I've seen of Michael Pittman, he's also a good locker room leader, veteran, who's going to be able to set that tone and a presence. And if you get a guy like Makai Lemon, who, I know some people don't like the way that he answered questions at the podium at the combine, and people thought that was going to make him some bad person. I didn't think it was that bad. If you listen to his answers, he gave, I thought, pretty structured and well thought out answers to things. And I think, from everything I've heard, he's going to be a playmaker in the NFL. I think he's not going to be a head case. We'll see that over time. Everything else I've heard about him from USC has been pretty positive. If you bring him in, and if he does have some bumps, I mean, hey, receivers can be the most volatile position group sometimes when it comes to temperament and how they think and they operate. But if he comes in with those two guys around him, he's going to have that much better chance to kind of learn from the people around him, have leaders help him grow into the NFL and then him turn into not just a star playmaker, but a leader for your locker room for futures to come and maybe be that tone setter like Hines Ward was for many years for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We got another question. This one comes from Dave in Silver Spring, Maryland. Dave, take it away.
Hey, this is Dave from Silver Spring. I had 2 questions. One is a strategy. It's a bit of a gamble, but if the Steelers actually used most, if not all, of their draft picks this year and ended up with way more players than they could use, but that might put them in the position of being able to trade more high-profile players because they will have drafted people to be depth and developmental. So after the 2026 draft is over, the only thing other teams can trade with is 2027 picks, which are the ones that you said that they didn't want to trade during the 2026 draft. But afterwards, that's all they would have to choose. Secondly, I'm hoping to come to the draft in person, and I was just wondering if you could remind everybody where you will be during all of this so we can come by and say hi. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. As always, you can call in like Dave did, and as well as Steelers Steve at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep a question under a minute. Dave, first, I'll answer your second question. That's the shorter one I can give. If you want to catch me during the NFL draft and you're in Pittsburgh, I will be at Aslan Brewing Company with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette doing our live show each night and day of the draft, Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday during the day. Come to Aslan Brewing. They've got great food, great beers to drink, and we will be doing our live show from there, where I'll be giving my reactions. You can see us there. Also interact with other sports writers who will be there with us at the Post-Gazette. It'll be a fun time. We'll be there all Thursday night, all Friday night, all Saturday during the day. You'll be able to hear our show there, watch it on TV from there. It's in the Strip District. In the terminals there. So look up Aslan Brewing Company if you want to join me there for the live show that we do. Now, to answer your question about the 12 picks. So what Dave's getting at here is he's like, he's heard me explain why I don't think the Steelers are going to use all 12 draft picks as draft picks. I think they're going to end up trading some of these picks at some point to move up in specific spots in the draft to try to make sure that they draft the players they really want. But there's some people who say, well, wait a second. This team needs to get younger. Why not use all 12 of those draft picks? Well, the reason that I point is this, hey, if you draft 12 guys, you already have a roster with a lot of veterans, a lot of solid players on it, and a pretty decent roster that's, again, been a perennial playoff roster. So if you draft 12 guys, you don't have the space in your roster to fit all 12 of them. You're naturally going to cut almost half of them, maybe even half of them. And so then you're basically wasting those draft picks. And so what Dave's suggesting here is, what if you do draft all 12 of those guys, or at least most of that 12, maybe 11 guys, and then you say, all right, we're going to trade away some of the veterans that we're holding on to, and try to find ways to make up the space so that we can include those guys. But my response to you, Dave, is think about this. I'm not talking about trading away and just not – they wouldn't cut guys with the top 100 picks. I'm talking about a lot of these day 3 picks where they have the 161st overall pick, the 216th overall pick, and then 3 7th-round picks. So they have a 5th, a 6th, and 3 7th-rounders. The hit rate of those positions in the draft is very low. It's not often you get good production from those positions. Sometimes you can, and that's why you want to still have it rounded. But in a year where you could try to make it so that you have 5 picks in the top 100, you could use some of these picks to help boost those picks. Maybe in certain spots where you're like, hey, we got our receiver in the first round. Now we really want to get a really good guard, but we're afraid our guard's going to be gone before 53. Let's use one of our 4ths and a 6th, and we'll move up 4 or 5 spots in the second round, and that'll help us get a guard. And I'm just using arbitrary numbers as an example. I'm not using specifics that I would trade exactly there. But the point being, that's the benefit that you can get of those picks. But if you wanted to go with your idea and send away veterans, we're talking about sending away guys who are already proven in the NFL, guys who you have on your roster that can contribute right now, for 6th and 7th round rookies who most likely would have been cut anyways. That's what I'm talking about here. Most 6th and 7th round guys do not make the final roster. Oftentimes they'll be sitting on the practice squad. They'll be the camp bodies, and that's fine. Stuff like that happens. Sometimes they do stick. Antonio Brown's a 6th rounder, but go back and look throughout Steelers history, and you'll most likely find a ton of misses there. Over time, that just that's part of the game. It's part of what happens there. And sometimes you'll find some good special teamers. Sometimes guys will work out, but 2021, their 6th and 7th round picks were Quincy Roche, Trey Norwood, Presley Harvin. None of them played in the league last year. So there you go. It's part of the game. It's part of the, when you get to that level of the draft, most players picks are that are picked are misses. The reason I'm saying to not draft 12 guys is not just because they don't need fresh bodies. They certainly do, but you can maximize the bodies that you're bringing in. You can improve the quality of the guys that you're bringing in and not just bring in quantity. And that is the important part of this, in my opinion. Quality over quantity, instead of trying to just take a whole bunch of guys and then get rid of veterans that can play decently for 6th and 7th round rookies. And again, there'll be 4 or 5 guys that they pick in the top 100 that I think that's the bulk of where you want the strength of this class to come from. But don't miss out on the opportunity to improve the value of those top 4 or 5 guys by holding on to these picks to hope for lottery picks, which is what 6th and 7th rounders are most of the time. So I hope that answers your question there, Dave. And thank you both to you and Steve who call in. We got a lot more questions to work through over the next couple of weeks as we get ready for the draft. The draft is less than 2 weeks away, y'all. So much to get into. We'll be back and we reveal our Mock Draft Monday winner for the week. That's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I'll remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great new way to get in on the action. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, matchups, all in one place, all during the playoffs. The extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Right now, the clear favorite to win the NBA Finals is the Thunder, but who could take their spot? Maybe the Spurs, maybe the Celtics. Who are you going to put your money on? Visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. FanDuel, play your game. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here today. As you know, it's Mock Draft Monday. It's the second to last Mock Draft Monday of the draft season. We got one more next week. That'll be our final Mock Draft Monday of the year. We thank everyone who's been playing along. As you guys know, if you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get, usually I post it in the Locked On Steelers Facebook group, my Blue Sky, or my Twitter. But at Carter Critiques, follow me there. I post out a note that says, "Hey, post your screenshots of your full Steelers mock drafts following these specific weekly rules, and you'll get a chance to get your picks on the show." This week's rules, I wanted you to draft a wide receiver and a defensive back within the top 80 picks, not just the top 100, but the top 80, emphasizing don't use it on one of those later 3rd round picks. Use it with that early 3rd round pick, or make sure that you maybe trade up and get both of these guys earlier on. So we had plenty of you all respond. It was a lot to comb through because a lot of you guys, I think, are starting to zero in more on where the Steelers are probably looking. But this week's winner goes to, from the Locked On Steelers Facebook group, our submitment, Cam R. Cam, thank you so much for joining. Actually, it might have been Twitter, so I apologize. But I think this was Cam R on Twitter. My bad. I'm mixing up my people. But Cam did a really good job here in making trades to go big, and he got my top receiver in this draft. That's Makai Lemon. He traded up with the Cowboys to get the 12th overall pick to make sure that he got Makai Lemon. And in doing so, I thought this was interesting. In this, he pulled off the trade by sending them the 21st overall pick, so their 1st rounder, the 85th overall pick, their natural 3rd rounder, and then their 2 4th round picks, or the 4th round pick and a 5th round pick. So essentially 4 picks to move up 9 spots and get Makai Lemon. Now, some people might say that's a little hefty, but to me, getting the guy who you know is going to be the top receiver in your mind, if that's how they see it, because that's how I see it with Makai Lemon, that's worth it. And again, Makai Lemon, I think fits the bill the Steelers are looking for. Separator, playmaker, goes up and gets the football, dangerous with the ball in his hands, dangerous before the ball gets in his hands because he's going to get open. I think that's an ideal trade scenario because you don't lose your second round pick and you keep your earliest third round pick. To me, that trade would really work out for the Steelers. Now, would it work in real life? Who knows? The Cowboys can be kind of crazy and trades are just really hard to predict. But the bottom line for me, I like that Makai Lemon trade up. Then in the second round, you got a guy that I've talked about a lot in Keelan Rutledge, the guard out of Georgia Tech, but you got him at 53, which I thought was really interesting because more and more that I see, if you guys remember, I went to the Senior Bowl, I watched a little bit of Keelan Rutledge tape, and then I talked to him, and I was like, this is my guy. I think that he would be a great fit for the Steelers. And when I looked at, other composite big boards and how people were ranking him and where he was going in a lot of mocks, he was going a lot in the fourth, maybe the third round. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. If the Steelers can get this guy in the third, that is amazing. But now there's people mocking him to like the early part of the second round. Keelan Rutledge might not be around 53, but in this mock, if he was, I think that'd be a heck of a get. I think he'd be a really good starting left guard, and I think the offensive line would be in a great place moving forward. Then you got another guy I really liked at the Senior Bowl, safety Bud Clark out of TCU. Now, Bud Clark, to me, flexible guy, played a lot down low in the formation at the safety role, strong safety, box safety, a little bit of slot here and there, but he also played deep. And when I saw him play deep against wide receivers at the Senior Bowl, I saw him make some plays, make some impressive interceptions. I think he could be a flexible safety, and if you get him in the third, you're in a good spot there. You got him at 76th overall. So there you have it. Your receiver at 12, your DB at 76. You've now fulfilled your rules, and then you filled in with other guys that I liked here. Darrell Jackson Jr., another Senior Bowl standout, in my opinion, defensive tackle out of Florida State. I think he's a good chance that you could bring him in, maybe put him at nose, see how he does and how he could free up other guys. His size lends himself to being there. I think it would really work. Then with the 135th overall pick, you went and got Taylon Green, the quarterback out of Arkansas. Now, he's a tall, fast player, and he's a good athlete. And so if you get that quarterback at some point, I think he adds to the room. I don't know if he's worth the 4th round pick, but for now, we'll just say, hey, that's fine, because the priority here was to get the first 4 picks, all your top 100 picks, to be good players. And I think those are 4 really strong players. You finished out with other guys like TJ Hall, Xavier Sori Jr., Will Kamarek, and Diego Pounds for your final picks in this draft class. But the bottom line, getting Makai Lemon and then still being able to have 4 picks in the top 100, and all 4 of those picks, in my opinion, being prospects that I think are going to be valuable this year, I'd say you did a pretty good job. Give it up for Cam R. Cam R, congratulations. You're this week's Mock Draft Monday winner. And we got only one more Mock Draft Monday before the NFL draft itself. We got a lot more ground to cover here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, more questions for us to get to. Keep it here at the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get social media. My handle is always at Carter Critiques. Read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. Find me here in the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes. Back here tomorrow with more on the Locked On Steelers podcast.